Hi folks, welcome to your latest planning outlook. This updated on Tuesday the 1st of September. As far as weather statistics go, it's the start of autumn, but it's really considered late summer, isn't it, at this time of year? And the weather pattern's pretty much standard fare for the start of September, as west or southwesterly winds will prevail. There's the remnants of some tropical storms in the mix, and the tantalising glimpse of some higher pressure, giving something a bit more settled at times. I'm going to dive straight in on quite a complicated looking chart. It's straight off one of the forecasting models, and this delightful piece of modern art is a chart which shows humidity in the atmosphere, and the deeper the red colours, the more humid the air. We've got a broad sweep here across the Atlantic, the British Isles and Europe, and I'll keep the British Isles highlighted just so we can see where things are going, and I'll just use it to tell the story as where things are going over the next week or so. What it indicates is that we've got a very humid air mass coming in from the southwest as we go through late Tuesday into Wednesday, and that high humidity air, a big tropical maritime air mass that we would call it, has the remnants of Hurricane Laura, which affected the USA last week, and it's done its normal thing. It's transitioned into a post-tropical storm, has come out into the Atlantic as a typical mid-latitude depression, and is moving towards us then with a series of fronts which has that high moisture loading left. So we'll really notice it as some heavy rain and some very low cloud. And once that high humidity air moves in and that hits the southwestern facing hills on the western side of Britain as a whole, that's where you'll get some high rainfall totals and also extremely low cloud once that very humid air in amongst that warm sector does move in. The fronts that bring that cloud and rain will move away eastwards to some extent through into Thursday, but we've still got the dregs of a quite humid atmosphere, so it will take some time as we go through Thursday to get rid of that dampness in the air, and still some rain and some cloud covering the hills for a good part of the day, although tending to break up and fade a bit as time goes on. So cloud bases just lifting a bit as time is going on, but may struggle to clear those western tops in particular. The conveyor belt of a front is still lurking around across the far south of Britain at this stage, and that's just forming a bit of a wave which happens on these trailing fronts quite commonly, and that gives some complications into Friday, more across the south of Britain really, in terms of just whether some rain peps up again by this stage towards the far south of England and maybe even the far south of Wales on Friday. Otherwise, we've transitioned into more of a polar maritime air mass across the northern side of Britain by this stage, the isobars tracing back towards Iceland and Greenland, and that bringing in a fresher feel, much lower humidity, higher cloud bases, but still with a low pressure nearby and a mixed westerly wind. There'll be some showers in the mix, and with that cooler air being around, perhaps the odd heavier shower just in there with some hail on the hills is possible, as those temperatures then are lower. We stick with a general westerly flow through into the weekend, and still bits of filaments of energy coming in off the Atlantic with slightly higher humidity may just bring some lower clouds, some rain and some drizzle at times. So the best description at this stage for the weekend is rather mixed. We're sort of stuck between low pressure to our north, high pressure to the southwest, and just dragging in weather patterns off the Atlantic. Precise detail is tricky at this stage. It might be that some low cloud and some rain at times on Saturday begins to clear through into more brighter spells and some showers as we just get into some slightly lower humidity air and slightly higher pressure onwards into Sunday. Looking out further west into next week, high pressure is nearby, but still some Atlantic moisture and some fronts trying to trail through at some point, I would suspect, next week. So let's take you through some synoptic charts and some rainfall details then for the days ahead. And this is Wednesday. There's that warm sector with that very humid air coming in at this stage. The wind strengthening soon to gale force across much of the Scottish Highlands. Strongest winds 50-60 miles per hour, at least in gusts across the higher tops, and some powerful gusts getting down to some lower slopes as well, with what is a fairly stable air mass. The air is then forced over the hills and down through some of the passes, and the winds reaching gale force 35-40 miles per hour, or a bit more perhaps later on across the tops of Snowdonia and the Lake District. The heavy rain then will increasingly set in from the west too. Here's the rainfall sequence, this in 3-hour accumulations and starting off early in the morning. Most places dry at first, but rain coming on to western Scotland, and that turning heavier here as we go through into the middle of the day, and gradually that rain will then push into most of Wales and the western side of the Lake District, increasingly extensive across Scotland, and some heavy rain continuing onwards into the evening. Totals increasingly by the evening picking up 10 mil in the space of around 3 hours, and total rainfall throughout this event across those southwestern parts of the Highlands, perhaps at Dumfries and Galloway, and later the Lake District overnight. You could be finding 30-40 mil quite widely, and some of the southwestern facing mountains in excess of 50 mil over the course of say 12 hours or so. By Thursday morning, that front associated with the heavy rain is dragging its way across England and Wales, and some brighter conditions following, but dregs of drizzly showers and something maybe a bit more frequent at times into western Scotland and the Lake District through Thursday. Not quite as heavy, but still a mil or so over a few hours, so conditions staying rather damp. That's Thursday's synoptic chart. Then there's the front having gone southeastwards. Still a breezy day with the southwesterly in charge, not quite as windy compared to Wednesday. Temperatures coming down a bit as we go into the daytime. The temperatures overnight may well have been higher than what you'll see on the mountains during the day as that warmer air within the warm sector clears away eastwards. By Friday, it's a cool westerly pattern that's in charge, with some showers and maybe something a bit more organised in terms of rain coming through associated with the front across Scotland, the most persistent rain across the western side of the Highlands. Some of those showers maybe locally on the heavy side with a bit of hail across the mountains thrown in. And the frontal wave that lurks across the south of Britain, maybe just skirting South Wales for something a bit more persistent left over from that previous system. Somewhere just in between you might get away with just some patchy rain, let's say for Snowdonia and across northern England, but a few bits of rain or a few showers can't be ruled out completely. And it's a windy day, especially across the northern half of Britain, with gale force winds, at least for periods, across most of the higher mountains. Into the weekend, and it's that mixed pattern that continues. Absolute detail and timing is uncertain, but the idea, as we mentioned in those earlier charts, that some fronts and bits of moisture will keep coming in from the Atlantic on strong westerly winds for some low clouds and rain at times, particularly across western hills. Western Scotland seems to be in the firing line for that, maybe a bit patchier and lighter rain for the Lake District and West Wales. Drier conditions relatively toward the eastern side of the Highlands and toward the Cheviots. Pressure builds a touch, those fronts drift away southwards a bit into Sunday. It may leave a legacy of some showers around across some areas, but some drier and brighter spells as well. Lighter winds, temperatures on the cool side, but if we can just lose the wind, the day will feel somewhat better. Not quite convinced at this stage just how next week pans out. Many indications keep trying to find a build of high pressure from the southwest as we go into next week, but I think we're still watching for various features drifting around the top of the high off the Atlantic for some fronts to particularly affect Scotland, and maybe weak fronts drifting southwards into England and Wales. The driest conditions the further south you go, the greater risk of rain the further northwest you are. I think that idea of that mixed westerly type continuing for a few days, but always with the suggestion of higher pressure at least having a go at trying to build. So fair to middling maybe is the best description for the week. We'll just keep an eye on how that develops. Hopefully those descriptions have been useful and of some interest to you. Of course, keep up to date with all our content every day. Thanks for watching this video. Bye for now.